in the little brochures that we had two women, and we just had hands holding like this. And then we said, if you are a woman in later life, has any of this happened to you? And then we said, you know, were you hit? Were you, you know, all the things. Were you told you were no good? Were you, you know, put down? And did you suffer any sexual abuse, which, of course, most of the women, but so we just, what we did was sort of tick off some of the dynamics of abuse rather than use domestic assault or anything, or domestic violence. And then we said where they could call, you know, if this has happened to you.
Some of the group members are referred by doctors or the Department of Aging, particularly Adult Protective Services. But as far as outreach, we have a blurb in the paper that goes out weekly. And we watch our terminology when we advertise the group. We will use like controlling relationships because many older people can't relate or choose not to relate to domestic violence or domestic abuse. So we watch our terminology. I also have 4 people that I work with. They're volunteers that come up with organizations that I can go and do outreach to. They've been very helpful about getting contact people and organizations that I can go and do outreach to, so that's been very helpful also.
In the beginning, what worked for us was partnering with Adult Protective Services and actually going out with the social workers and presenting ourselves as a service. That worked the best. But then we started connecting with the victim advocates who were working in the courts and outreaching to them. And now we're actually working through the senior centers, the emergency rooms, to reach victims there. So the senior centers are now inviting us in to speak and do presentations. And the emergency rooms call. When they get an older battered woman, they actually call and say, we have a client. Or if they have one on the floor because they're there for some other reason, they'll call us and ask us to come in. One of our newest outreaches is the internet. We actually have added our program to the internet, to our website. And we're getting calls from all over the United States from people saying, my mom and dad, they're still in this relationship, or my brother is abusing my mom, and you know, what can I do? They live in Orange County, how can I get them help? And so sometimes we actually will outreach directly to the victim saying, hi, your daughter called and she's concerned, you know, can we come out and see you? Can we help you? So we're outreaching in different ways.
The outreach is pretty much by word of mouth. One woman helping another woman, helping another woman. We do have advertisements in some of the little local rural papers about our group, you know, to get women to come. But the outreach is woman by woman.
We're trying to get the ministers and the leaders in the faith-based community to understand that these people are in their churches too. And telling them to go home and be a better wife, or telling them, you know, yes, your son has problems, but you're the mom, you know, you need to help them, is not solving the problem. So we want them to know that services are out there and there's a place for them to refer them to. One of the ministers we outreach to actually let us use this church for 9 months for counseling to one of the victims in his community. So we decided it would be a place to outreach to.
Refugees are resettled in the Phoenix area or other areas by resettlement agencies who are there. So what they do house refugees in the same community, same housing, same complex. So you may have 20 refugees in the same complex, which makes it easier for us to go to outreach to them, to talk about services and, bring them to the Mosaic Center at the Area Agency on Aging, which we provide transportation for them to bring them over. So when they are there, then we start to talk about their needs, and then we get to the domestic violence part. So the outreach is done in the community.
Trying to find what works, and I think it's not necessarily just one thing, just looking for different ways. I mean, trying to be open to using different tactics, and if it doesn't work, you try something else. when we started the program, we were developing a poster because we started this program 9 years ago. And there were no posters out there. Every elder abuse poster I had was somebody very frail, usually in a nursing home setting, and a lot of the older women didn't identify with that. So we were looking for ways to develop posters, outreach posters that we could place in the community. And we came up as a staff and the professionals with some ideas about how that poster should look like. But the best idea we had was to have focus groups. We went out to the older adults in the community. We ran about 4 different focus groups with very diverse group of older adults. And we found out that we had to totally scrap our ideas because they wanted a positive. Yes, they realized that there was abuse, but they wanted us to concentrate on the hope. That was a way that we could reach them by concentrating on hope rather than on the posters, which most domestic violence posters of younger women have women with bruises, and they didn't want to see that. They wanted to see strong, independent, older adults who were dealing with abuse.
I had done a regular support group every Wednesday night, and it was mostly, of course, young women who had children. But every once in a while, I'd have an older woman come who was maybe 60, 70. And I found it very interesting, and I was wondering how it was for them. And then I got a couple calls from some women that were over 50. And there came a time where there were about 5 women that I knew. And I thought, I'm going to send them a letter and see if they'd come to a group. And all 5 of them came to the group. That was the very first support group we had, which I was pretty excited about. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know. I thought, I'm just going to try. So we had our little support group. Meanwhile, I wanted to make the program bigger. And so what I did was I sent letters out. I started an advisory committee. And I had letters to the Senior Center and the Commission on Aging and Adult Protection and other people that I knew worked with older women. And so we had meetings and trying to find ways that we could get the word out that now that we had this group for women. I named the group Safe and Healthy. So it didn't have this big abuse stigma on it. And that seemed to be a good name. And then, I think that I had passed out in all the agencies little flyers about the group. I think I sent out hundreds of letters and little folders to doctors and lawyers and churches and all kinds of other places that I could think of where an older person might be. And it was challenging to find them. I have found that over the years, the way that I have had people have found us is they've been recommended actually by their attorney, by a doctor, by maybe their church, by other women that have come. And so it's been a lot of word of mouth.
My philosophy is basically, if you build a good program, if you build a solid program, if you've thought about a lot of the things that I've already talked about and worked through a lot of that, if you build it, they will come. Kind of like the Field of Dreams. Because word of mouth is incredible. One of the programs that I worked with, we had folks come from the middle of Wisconsin, had no idea. We hadn't done any, dropping pamphlets or putting out matchbook covers or any of that kind of stuff. In Wisconsin, hadn't done any quote outreach, but it was just word of mouth. So if you're safe, people will come.